Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever gone out of your way for someone? Maybe you lent them money when they were struggling. Maybe you defended them when other people talked badly about them. Maybe you were just there, consistently, reliably, emotionally, when they had nobody else. And then one day that same person became cold toward you, critical, distant, or worse, they turned on you completely. And you're sitting there thinking, what did I do wrong? Here's the hard truth. You probably didn't do anything wrong. What happened to you has been happening to people for thousands of years. And over a century ago, a philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche put it into words that most people still aren't ready to hear. Helping someone, genuinely deeply helping them, can make them resent you. Not always, but more often than anyone wants to admit. And today, we're going to break down exactly why that happens, what's really going on inside the mind of the person you helped, and most importantly, how to protect yourself without becoming cold or closed off. Because understanding this doesn't make you bitter, it makes you smarter about how you love and give. Part 1. The debt nobody asked for. When you help someone in a significant way, and I mean really help them, not just hold a door open, something invisible happens in the relationship. A debt is created. Now, money debts are uncomfortable enough. But emotional debts, those are heavier. Because you can't just write a check and make it go away. When you pay someone's rent, when you help them get a job, when you sit with them through their worst moments, you've seen something. You've seen them at their lowest. You've seen them need, and in the human mind, that creates a very specific kind of tension. You become the person who knows. They become the person who needed. And for a lot of people, that gap, that difference in position, quietly eats away at them. Not because they're bad people necessarily, but because the human ego doesn't like feeling small, and being helped, especially in a big way, can feel uncomfortably close to being small. Part 2. Why being helped can feel like an insult. This sounds strange at first, but follow the logic. Most people walk through life with a story they tell themselves about who they are. Strong, independent, capable, able to handle things. That internal story is important. It's how people maintain their dignity and self-respect. Now imagine that story gets interrupted. Something goes wrong in their life, and suddenly they need help. They need you specifically. And you come through, on the surface, they're grateful. And in that moment, they probably genuinely are. But underneath, something else is also happening. Their brain is quietly registering. I couldn't do this myself. Someone had to rescue me. I was weak enough that I needed saving. Nietzsche called this a wound to the will to power. This deep, fundamental need that humans have to feel autonomous, capable, and in control of their own lives. When you help someone, especially repeatedly, you become a constant reminder of a moment they'd rather forget. You didn't mean to do that, but you became a symbol of their weakness. And the easiest way to get rid of that uncomfortable feeling? Get rid of you. Part 3, how gratitude slowly turns into resentment. Right after you help someone, gratitude is genuine. They feel relieved, thankful, maybe even a little emotional about it. The relationship feels close, warm, but time passes, and the debt doesn't disappear. It just sits there. Every time they see you, some part of their brain quietly whispers, I still haven't paid this back. I might never be able to. That creates low-level guilt. And guilt, when it has nowhere to go, transforms into something uglier, resentment. Because guilt is painful, and the human mind doesn't like sitting in pain, so it looks for a way to reframe the situation. And the most convenient reframe available is this. The person who helped me wasn't actually that generous. They had an agenda. They helped me to feel superior. They wanted me to owe them. None of that might be true, but it's a story that makes the debt feel less like a debt and more like something that was done to them. And suddenly, you're not the person who helped. You're the person who manipulated. The person who judged, the person who made them feel small. That's resentment, and it's one of the most quietly destructive forces in human relationships. Part 4, the power shift nobody talks about. Every relationship has an invisible balance, not a conscious one. Nobody sits down and calculates this, but it exists. When you constantly give your time, your money, your emotional energy, your opportunities, you naturally end up in a higher position in that balance. And the other person, whether they realize it or not, ends up lower. Most people can tolerate that for a while. But long term, it becomes suffocating. Nobody wants to feel like the lesser person in a relationship permanently. Nobody wants to feel like they're always receiving and never giving equally back. So what do some people do? They don't try to rise up to your level. Instead, and this is the brutal part, they try to pull you down. They criticize you. They point out your flaws loudly. They undermine your confidence in subtle ways. They minimize what you've done for them, because if they can bring you down a notch, the balance feels more even, and their ego can breathe again. It's not logical, but it's deeply human. Part 5, your success becomes the problem. There's one more layer to this that's important to understand. Sometimes the issue isn't just about the help itself. It's about who you are compared to them. If you're more stable financially, more emotionally together, more disciplined, more happy, your help doesn't just highlight their need. It highlights the gap between where they are and where you are. And that gap can feel humiliating. You become a mirror they don't want to look into. Because when they look at you, they see everything they haven't built yet. Everything they think they should be, but aren't. Some people respond to that by getting inspired. They use it as motivation. But others, and Nietzsche was very specific about this, they respond by tearing the mirror down. Instead of doing the hard work of rising, they find it easier to make the other person seem less impressive. To criticize, diminish, gossip, or walk away entirely. It protects their self-image, and it costs you the relationship. Part 6, you are not the problem. Read this slowly. If someone betrayed you after you helped them, it does not mean you were wrong to help. It does not mean you were naive or stupid or too trusting. It means you were dealing with someone whose ego was too fragile to hold the weight of what you gave them. That's not your failure. That's their limitation. Most of the betrayals that come after generosity aren't planned. They're not calculated evil. They're the result of unprocessed guilt, threatened pride, and an ego that didn't know how to say, I needed help, and I'm okay with that. Understanding this matters, because the alternative is becoming someone who closes off completely, who stops giving, who starts viewing every act of kindness as a transaction waiting to go wrong. And that kind of life, protected, guarded, small, is not the answer either. Part 7, how to help without destroying the relationship. So what do we actually do with all of this? Here's what changes everything. The goal of real healthy help is not to rescue someone. It's to strengthen them. Those are completely different things. When you rescue someone, you solve their problem for them. You carry the weight. And they walk away dependent, indebted, and secretly a little humiliated. When you strengthen someone, you help them build the capacity to solve it themselves. You stay alongside them, not above them. Practically, this means a few specific things. First, help without needing credit. The moment you give with the expectation of being remembered for it, you've turned generosity into a transaction. Give, and then genuinely release it. What you gave is no longer yours. Second, never remind people of what you did. Even once, even subtly, even in a fight. The moment you use your help as leverage, you confirm every suspicious story they were telling themselves about your motives. Third, set limits before you help, not after. Be honest about what you can give and what you can't. Helping without limits doesn't make you generous. It makes you a resource that people take for granted and eventually resent. Fourth, let people struggle sometimes. Not because you're cruel, but because struggling is how people build real confidence. Saving someone from every difficulty teaches them that they can't handle difficulty alone, and that belief will quietly poison them. Fifth, only give what you can genuinely afford to lose, financially, emotionally, energetically. If getting nothing back in return would devastate you, you're not in a position to give that thing freely yet. The final truth, strong, secure people receive help with grace. They feel grateful, they pay it forward, and they don't need to tear you down to feel okay about themselves. But people who are deeply insecure, people whose sense of self depends entirely on feeling capable and independent, they experience your generosity as a threat. And threatened people do threatening things. This doesn't mean stop caring. It means care wisely. Help with your eyes open. Give freely but not endlessly. Stay warm but stay grounded. Because the real measure of emotional maturity isn't how much you give. It's how clearly you see the people you're giving to, and how honestly you understand what your help is actually doing to them. Helping isn't saving. Loving someone isn't losing yourself. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can offer another person isn't your help. It's your belief that they're capable of figuring it out on their own.